Chelsea began her afternoon at the club with a strained smile and her phone raised to eye level, the golden light of the grand lobby reflecting off the marble table into streaks of illumination, with a backdrop of perfectly trimmed greenery resembling a natural photo filter. When Madison walked in, her pace slow but deliberate. No words were needed to register the growing chasm between them, like a crack crawling across glass, starting small and harmless, yet widening with every movement. They had once been parallel lines in a glittering rhythm of life, sharing morning workouts, afternoon content reviews, and evening analytics over campaign metrics. But now, Chelsea's posts had grown sharper, more defensive, while Madison's notes had become increasingly direct, stripped of preamble, as if they were speaking two different languages, each insisting theirs was the correct pronunciation. They sat across from each other on the terrace overlooking the pool, where green tiles traced the water's edge like dotted lines drawing the eye outward, and a server placed 2 glasses of mint lemonade before them, refreshing in scent, but unable to dispel the damp tension seeping into the space between them. Chelsea suggested going to therapy together, disguised as a rational proposal but really a covert test, because when a relationship fractures, conversations tend to morph into unspoken arguments that no one wants to own. A neutral expert, she hoped, could do what they had delayed for too long. Name what had been denied. Madison nodded, not out of distrust, but because she understood the limits they both had in this performance of appearances, where a smile could evolve into an elegantly edited goodbye if they didn't actively rewrite the script. Then, as if a hidden camera clicked at the exact moment, Alison appeared at the entrance of the members' area. Petite but firm, her eyes sharp like glass cutters gliding through a crystal showroom, capable of causing fractures wherever they touched. She stood there just long enough for Chelsea to see, for Madison to notice, and for the air to dip 1 degree, as if the thermostat had been switched to energy-saving mode. The club, strict with guest policies and invitation lists, its automatic doors synced to schedules busier than breaking news alerts. Still, Alison had managed to be there, again as she always was, like a subtraction that showed up reliably in every one of Chelsea's equations. She walked to their table, a smile not on her lips but in her gaze, the kind of greeting used by those who never intend to leave without leaving a mark. Chelsea lifted her glass, not to drink but to give her hands something to do besides clenching, and Madison set her phone down carefully, as if any touch might crack the surface of dialogue. Alison opened in the language she knew best. Opportunity. She spoke of a viral campaign no one had dared to launch in this climate, a fresh launchpad for a personal brand already too familiar with growth charts, and a spin-off product that could outrun the market with just the right mix of truth and audacity. But Chelsea saw through the glossy varnish to a flimsy skeleton of exploitation, where every promise came framed with unspoken conditions, and every metric demanded access to datasets that should remain proprietary. She declined, not loudly, not judgmentally, just enough to block the pathway Alison was trying to plug into her work ecosystem. Alison switched topics like a driver shifting gears at a hairpin turn, mentioning Craig, mentioning his cruelty, referencing invisible wounds buried deep, talking of loneliness when labeled a nuisance rather than someone seeking an exit, rather than auditioning for another role in a drama overpopulated with side characters. Madison remained calm, but her phone buzzed with a work call and she had to step away, leaving a space Alison filled instantly with emotionally loaded phrases and vague warnings about Chelsea hurting anyone who got too close. When Madison returned, she brought reassurance like a soft cloth placed over a surface just struck, complimenting Chelsea's handling, though her eyes held a faint shadow of a question, like a watermark tucked in the margin.
Chelsea noticed,
and she knew that unanswered questions, if left to fester, would eventually darken into indelible stains. She proposed they relocate to a glass-walled meeting room nearby, intending to review timelines for the upcoming Chelsea's business presentation, where she planned to reposition the brand, restructure its interface, upgrade the partner chain, and reallocate the creative budget under a more transparent standard. But Alison hadn't disappeared. She drifted along the hallway like a shadow, sometimes reflected in a mirror, Sometimes just the sound of heels across polished wood. Enough to remind Chelsea the game wasn't over. What followed felt like a pop quiz. The large screen in the meeting room sprang to life from sleep mode and began playing a short clip. Not Chelsea's presentation deck, but a maliciously edited video splicing random moments into a distorted narrative. A raised eyebrow cut to resemble contempt. A private comment about saving yourself first removed from context, knowing that a wrong touch could bring the whole surface crashing down. They shut off the screen, locked all input ports, alerted the club's IT staff, and requested access logs. But in the world of secured gates, nothing is truly impenetrable. Every firewall has a service port, every server a patch that trails an attack vector by one version. Chelsea wondered how Alison had breached both physical and digital safeguards. Was someone on the inside helping her? Or had she simply paid enough to outsource the intrusion? A cold ripple slid down Chelsea's spine as she recalled the way Alison's gaze always seemed to measure distance. Not out of curiosity, but to choose the perfect lever. Madison's subtle touch on her wrist grounded her back to the present, reminding her the best course was calm. Gather evidence, follow the plan, and never feed the panic, because panic was always the wild card attackers counted on. That evening they returned to the bar, not as two victims crawling back to the scene, but as survivors assessing aftershock, checking which surfaces still held and which had fractured. They kissed softly, not to perform or hide, but as a quiet signal that some things remained intact, no matter how loudly the world whispered otherwise. Across the room, Alison stood, her eyes radiating irritation. But hers was a kind of resentment that translated into strategy, rarely stopping at sentiment. She lifted her phone not to record, but to activate something pre-planted. Because if a screen had switched on before, a soft buzz like a mechanical insect filled the air as a mini drone emerged from the vent in the nearby art exhibit, floating through the space like a metallic butterfly seeking a perch. Most guests mistook it for a toy, but Chelsea and Madison recognized the hum. One that content creators knew well from tech expos, risky ad campaigns, and legal fine print. The drone emitted blinking lights, and the room's screens flickered to black, displaying a distorted Chelsaic slogan, twisted into a mocking message suggesting that even the most elegant stories could be disassembled into Frankenstein monsters. Seconds later, the audio system blared a fake speech. Disjointed clips in Chelsea's voice, edited and warped into fabricated pledges she never made. No blood, no screaming, no violence in the conventional sense, but a digital violence swept the room. An assault on reputation, a hijacking of narrative, a theft of identity built on thousands of hours and ethical decisions. Madison signaled the manager, and the tech team cut power to the feed. Silence fell, just figures asking what had just happened. Alison vanished like smoke, her absence louder than her presence. Chelsea inhaled deeply, scanned the cautious stares aimed her way. Typical of any room reacting to a lead being dragged into chaos center stage. She didn't tremble, didn't cry, didn't plead for sympathy. She took the path of professional crisis control. Incident reports, log backups, legal notices, an emergency PR kit, and a reminder to staff to tighten access protocols. As they left, Madison was quieter than usual, not shaken but wary of patterns. And Alison had become a pattern. Showing up, invading private space, rewriting stories into sarcastic parodies. Madison recalled Alison's warning that Chelsea would hurt anyone who got too close, and like any smart person, didn't dismiss it just because it came from the villain. She turned it over, examined it under different lights, wondering if a shard of truth was hidden inside or if it was just a psychological trap. Chelsea saw it in her eyes and chose not to lecture on trust like a weary preacher. Instead, she let her actions speak. Through consistency, through boundaries, through quiet proof that temptation wouldn't erase agreed-upon lines. The next morning, Chelsaics held an emergency meeting. Chelsea outlined a 3-layer content security plan, hardware controls. Access came via a modified device in the exhibit vent, with firmware anomalies and activation logs matching Alison's appearance, though hallway camera footage was mysteriously glitched for 3 crucial minutes. Gaps, The dirtiness wasn't in the accusation, but in how it reframed good faith as manipulation. The journalist, more careful than expected, requested comment. Within 2 hours, Chelsea sent a brief statement, timeline, technical evidence, and a willingness to cooperate. No pleas for pity, no counterattacks. Just facts for the patient audience of truth. The gap between Chelsea and Madison was theirs to tend. Madison admitted to herself that she wavered, not because she trusted Alison, but because she feared ignoring faint warning signs in the name of love. Chelsea looked directly into that doubt like a morning mirror. No denial, no cosmetic cover-up. They agreed on protocols like a product rollout. Transparency around disruptive individuals, shared account audits, no public overreactions, joint therapy when schedules allowed, and a handwritten list of what they needed from each other, so expectations didn't live silently in their heads. In the days that followed, the club tightened protocols. Screens were inspected, vents reviewed, and a notice went out reminding members to secure their devices. Alison still appeared in public areas, but security kept her gently distanced from technical zones. She laughed, claiming overreaction, portraying herself as a wounded woman seeking fairness, but always with the tone of someone performing for a hidden camera. Then the Chelsea presentation arrived, like a sunrise that showed up on time regardless of storms the night before. Chelsea stood on stage under soft white lights and walked the audience through product, people, purpose. She spoke of integrity, not just meeting laws but exceeding them, so when the story got twisted, the hardware of truth still held. Madison sat in the second row, scribbling in a notebook like she did in her early days, loving the work more than the applause. And when it ended, she felt a quiet peace no drama could offer. A serenity born from watching someone do exactly what they said they would, repeatedly, over time. No blood was spilled that night.
No scattered battles.
No screaming matches for tabloids to feast on. But a boundary was drawn, a relationship reinforced, a saboteur repelled. Not with vengeance, but with the perseverance of doing what was right. Alison wouldn't stop. People like her never did. She might sue, hack, leak, bait. But Chelsea and Madison had redesigned their defenses. No more blind spots, no more unspoken expectations. They didn't promise to never hurt each other. That's what hashtags are for. They promised that if pain came, they'd name it early, call it right, and fix it through steady action, not fireworks. And in the end, Chelsea relearned a lesson the digital world often erases. That identity isn't protected by blocking every gaze, but by living values so consistent, every gaze finds the same story.